We'll now want to turn to Tom Farrell for his scratch building projects. Tom, welcome.
Thank you for having me this evening. And tonight I'm going to finish the terminal, Gary's Rustic Buff Beer Distributor Terminal. As you may recall, Gary and I are exchanging buildings. I'm building a model for his On30 Puerto Borracho Railway. He's building one for my Rustic Buff. And we're each doing our own thing so that on purpose, our buildings will look a little out of place on each other's layout and therefore become a conversation piece. That's the nice liberty of working with On30. So each one will be unique to our railroads. Mine is favors the gritty Depression-era Pittsburgh, weathered wood siding, soot, and something that fits right at home at the Rustic Buff and Old Gothic. And I did put Spanish name on his building just to be completely out of place. Now, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Gary's masterpiece, the Puerto Borracho Railroad, but he does all these whimsical things, and he's an extraordinary modeler. I have 3 slides I'm going to share. Everything he does is scratch built, and this is all O scale, ON30 gauge. And pretty neat stuff. That's another scene, El Jefe, one of his engines. And the whole thing is just like a comic strip that comes alive. And everything's weathered, everything's handmade, all scratch built. He has these characters, which he makes himself. And it's just an amazing place. If you want to get lost in another world, come aboard our On30 Railroading Facebook page or Gary's own Puerto Borracho Railway Facebook page, and you can see more of his work. Look at that. Isn't that, as a freelancer in On30, you can do just about anything you want. And he takes it to an extreme, but it's just very interesting scenes, very funny things. And he writes terrific stories to accompany his artwork. And this is a mock-up of what he's going to make for me. He always does a drawing in advance. And we agreed that by December 31st, we would have each other's models built, structures built. I sort of got a jump. I had a little window, so I knocked mine out. And we'll feature his in a subsequent show. So I'm going to start from the beginning, and this will take us all the way to the end. I start with a piece of plywood and 1/4-inch material. Then I use Monster Works O-scale concrete block material. This is this laser cut material that's just highly detailed and a real time saver. When I use this material, I always take a mini razor saw blade and I cut the top to, in case you see any of this exposed surface, it appears as though they're actual blocks and not just the saw cut. Nice little technique. Then I went to Monster Model Works O-scale old brick sheet. The idea of using 2 different materials, and sometimes I use 3, is to show that the original structure was the larger one in concrete block, and then they had additions to the left and right as the business expanded. Next up, I put sill plates, 2x10s, on top of the brick to get ready for the eventual studding. Actually, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to put on the right side of the building at this point, but I did know what I was going to do in the middle of the building. I decided that this would be a stick build, and it would be basically a decrepit building that was partially fallen in. So I wanted to paint the inside, the foundation area, this black acrylic paint, so it would cover up any lack of details if you looked in between the floor joists. Then I started with sill plates, 2x12s in this case. And then I set in the floor joists. These are 2x12s. These were yellow glued in here. I cleaned this up. Those are 2x12s. I wanted 2x12s because I was going to have kegs of beer on there, so it would be a lot of weight. So I wanted something a little substantial. That was my thinking. Then I began with the stud wall, and that was 2x6s with 1x6 siding. And I used 3 hunter line colors to stain the siding. There's another view. Then it added this little cupola on here. This is a grant line door, and this is very thin, I think it's 1/32 inch plywood that I had. See, I put the first floor piece in there. So there's a view of the grant line door, the plywood, and these 1x6s, the 2x6, 2x8 frames. There's a look at the back wall. You can see the 3 different colors, the brown, a blue-gray, and a driftwood, they call it. But the idea is to be random. And you don't want uniformity when you do something, when you do anything in my book. But this just makes it much more interesting to have all these different colors. And we'll push these colors back with pan pastels later. Now I've put in the floor here. This is just more 2x6 material, purposely exposing the 2x12 studs. And these are 2x12 rafters sitting on 2x6s and a 4x4. Just another view again, seeing the 3 colors I used. This really doesn't take a lot of skill, to be honest. It just takes a lot of patience. Just slowly, one piece at a time, either with tweezers or poking it with an X-Acto blade and setting it in place. Just another view. At this point, I decided I wanted a sliding metal door. So I took 2 pieces of styrene and I pre-painted them with Floquil Old Silver. I took a couple coats because I didn't prime them. Then I just bent them in here and super glued right here, and I super glued it along this edge. And here I've stained the used Monster Works brick with a rust color that really comes off well for brick. These are the base colors. That's just a gray primer there. There's a better view of those. These are simulating the tracks of a sliding garage type door. And it's another view. I decided to put in the decking here. So I used the same size wood, but I ran it in a different direction, and I ran these joists in a different direction, principally for variation. But typically when you're having a loading, at this point I was going to have a loading dock here. I just thought it would be better to have the wood running this way, front to back, rather than side to side. And I wanted this little variation here. Now the building's starting to take shape. You can see my garage door, sliding metal door. This is styrene, evergreen styrene. It's pre slotted like that. I just painted that. Those are base colors still, just rust colors. There's a nice close-up. Not exactly sure what's going on there. I'll go back and put pan pastels on this, and then I'll touch it with the Floqual silver to show that it's not completely rusted out. And I've stained touched up the ends of these boards. They were freshly cut before, now they're stained. There's the right-hand side. So again, this is just an exercise in patience. These are 1x6s cut on my chopper. 3 different colors. I start at the bottom, work up. There'll be a piece of trim that covers that up around the perimeter of this door opening. These are 2x6s in this case. This is at very high magnification. So if it stands up at this view at a normal viewing distance, it really looks nice. There's a little trick. This super glue that you see here, when I finish my model, I spray it with dull coat. This disappears completely. You don't see any of this. Any of the glue, any of the shiny glue of the super glue or anything from the yellow glue, the dull coat makes it go away. So begin to get a little warp in here. I took that out of it. These are just some odd size piece of material that I had in my scrap bin. Now I began the weathering process. So put a little silver on here. Put some pan pastels on here. That's actually bad lighting, I think. It's not really that color. That's the right color there. I thought, when I was doing this, I thought, instead of just having holes here, that I'd show the boards falling into the foundation, if you will. So I went back at some point. I don't know if the shows in some of the future slides, but I show the actual missing boards are bent and broken and put down into these dark spaces. I did it on both sides. This is that vestibule on the side of the building. This is actual metal siding. So this I did prime with Tamiya primer, the light primer that I use. Then I painted it with actually Tuscan Floqual. And then I added acrylics on top of it. And then I finished with dabbing it with silver, Floqual, old silver. Now I've put the sign up. I did a Google translator since I don't speak Spanish. I speak German, which is of no use here. And put this into PowerPoint, made it, I think this was 4 inches by 1/2 inch. I mounted it on a piece of plywood with Elmer's glue. Then I framed it with a 2x1. I pre-painted this off red. At this point, I was making everything red here, all the trim. And I painted this door red. As you'll see, I changed the color of that door. More trim. Here I've added some pan pastels to knock that red back a little bit. I also take an emery board and I sand a little bit here to just take some of the paint off, and it exposes the wood, which further weathers the structure. I put these runners on here, which are 2x8s. And then I took this thin plywood, no piece bigger than a 2x8. These are, I think, 2x4s actually. What do you think? I'm not sure. but I just glued these on with super glue. There's the back wall. When you do a stick build and you're going to go to all this trouble, I leave a lot of spaces open, so I'm not burying my detail. You know, if I covered this all up and nobody knew it was there but me, what's the point, right? So I leave a lot of, one of the reasons I leave these boards off is so you can say, hey, he really did stud that wall, or hey, that roof is prototypical. You know, it just adds, plus your eye wanders to that. So it gives you a little more visual interest. This is the side here, the plywood. At this point, I was thinking I put something here. I wasn't sure what, but I thought that was too plain. This was a happy accident. When you put lacquer over acrylic, you get a very negative reaction. And it looks like peeling paint. And I thought, wow, couldn't try to do that if you wanted to. So I put the yellow on there over the red. Then I put some sort of hand-painted lacquer, and it just ate up the paint. And I just was so pleased with the look. I mean, it just really, really came alive there. Here's the rest of that. See how I stud that wall? You don't have to be too, or how I put the siding on. You don't have to be too careful with these corners because you're going to put trim on there. I actually had to go back and cut some of these, cut some of these high points out to get the trim to sit properly. Like that was a high spot, that was a high spot. So I went in with a number 10 blade and just cut that out so that the trim would seat properly. There's my roof. Remember I talked about leaving areas exposed so you can see the door, you can see the track, you can see these runners, see the studs, you can see the plywood, you know. And then I put some of these pieces on here. This is purposely randomly put up there, these support pieces. Now she's really starting to shape up, at least the center part. This is this picture's out of sequence because the door is yellow now. There you go. So then I thought with my success of a yellow door that I'd add a second color to the structure. So I painted yellow on the fronts of these ceiling joists, and then this little side addition, these are actually 6x6s and 2x6s. I painted it with yellow and very dry brushed it. Very nice effect. Added a second color to it, made it a little festive looking. And then I told you earlier how I toned things down with the pan pastels. You'll see how bright that yellow is. It's a little loud for me, so I went back and weathered it with grays and whites, pan pastels. Then I put these boards on here to show that danger, no entrance, condemned, no trespassing. I made this appear as though it fell down. It's in a state of disrepair. This is how I treated that big piece of plywood. I went online and looked for Mexican beers, old Mexican beers in the 20s and 30s. Found these, printed them out, cut them, Elmer glued them on there. These are just pieces of basswood cut to make stairs and treads. And then I extended my decking over to this side of the building. And there's a good look of those Pilsner, Superior, Cerveza, Mexicali. It's all in Spanish. Being from Pittsburgh, I had to throw that in. And see that's that Monster Works brick. So it's multiple colors of rust, and then just with this grouting material. I mean, it comes off as a very effective brick. Another shot of the roof, close up of the roof. That is the finished building right there. I hope Gary is happy when he receives it. It fits well in my layout. I hate to see it go.
Tom, thank you very much. See you next time.